So let's begin. Welcome to all of you. Today it's the second episode of our Renaissance series, which focuses on trying to address some of the issues that might have been raised or become more important following this long period of COVID restrictions that have changed the way we work. Placing us often behind a computer screen, keeping us away from our colleagues, from our partners, and from our clients, and forcing us to adapt to, as they call it, a new normal. As Chamber of Commerce, we have decided to try and help our members by providing them with new skill sets that can be used to deal with the situation. And one of these episodes, we decided to dedicate it to game theory. And the idea was connected to the famous prisoner dilemma, which in reality is just a very small part, as Robin and Chiara will highlight, of the bigger game theory. And the idea was we are to some degree locked in our own space with limited access to other people that normally are within our reach and whose decision will impact on our end result. So do we cooperate or do we defect is basically the question about how can we use game theory to understand how to get the best outcome from the decisions and the situations we're in. And we're going to ask, we're going to benefit from the experience and competence from Robin Donald and Chiara Donald, who are experts on game theory. And so I'll pass it over to them to help us and guide us in this experience. Off you go.
I'm not Ronald McDonald. I'm a baker. Imagine you're a baker, and along with all the other bakers in the town, you've formed an agreement. And that each of you, each day, will bake 100 loaves. And these will all sell at $1 each, which means you'll make $100 for your day's work, if you all cooperate. Of course, there's nothing to enforce this cooperation, which is an important point in game theory. So you might decide to defect. Now, by defect, we mean you're going to try to make more money. You're going to make an extra batch of, say, 50 loaves. And as a rudimentary knowledge of economics tells us, the more loaves that come on the market, the more it will push the price down. And suddenly you're in a game. In fact, you're in a dilemma. Good evening. My name is Robin Donald, and along with my wife, Chiara, we operate our consultancy, which is business game theory.
Good evening.
Okay. Tonight, you'll be experiencing a unique webinar in that it's truly experiential learning. The unique part comes from the fact that you can all participate live, and we'll show you how in just a minute. Now, normally we have full seminars and workshops, etc., etc. So you'll understand that within this 1 hour, we're trying to telescope a lot into it. So we'll skip over some of the introductory stuff, but we'll feed it in as we play, and all will be revealed. Okay. Now we'll get you all logged in, and you can participate in the game. Don't be shy about this. It's very simple, and there's no right or wrong answers. There's no pressure. It's very informative and enjoyable. Are we sharing? Are we sharing the slides?
Not yet, but they're coming, I think.
But they're coming. Okay. If all of you would like, either on another tab on your browser or on a tablet or on your phone, to go to the website businessgametheory.com, if you please. This evening, Chiara is the director, the master of ceremonies. So if this all goes wonderfully smooth, I thank you very much. And if it doesn't, well, we know who to blame. If you go to the website, businessgametheory.com, it should look something like that. You might have to scroll up and down a bit if you're using your phone. And on the right-hand side, you'll see a link that says, I have a class code. Click on the class code, and it will take you to the sign-in page, which looks like this. Next slide, please. Right. The class code is in the chat. It is there. It's there in the chat. XYT640. It's not case sensitive. And fill in your name. If you're shy, you can use any name. We have Julius Caesar and Napoleon Bonaparte join our classes frequently. So go ahead and jump in. How are we doing? Can we see who's coming in? Now, when you have joined, your screen will look like this. Next slide. It will tell you to wait until the teacher, which would be Chiara, starts the game. If we look here, can we now share the live screen? We can see now that the people are joining in. So while you're logging in, let me explain it all as we go along.
Donald, which class code should I put?
XYT 640.
640.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we'll go back to the slides for the baker. So this game is called The Baker's Dilemma. 1 second till I find my precise notes. Let me set the scene. Okay, game theory is used in analyzing many things. It goes from the behavior of genes in evolutionary biology through many strategic situations, all the way up to international negotiations at the UN. We won't be covering all of that this evening. We'll be focusing on social dilemmas. Now, social dilemmas come in many flavors, but they share one common feature. In all of them, there is a misalignment, if not actually a direct conflict, between the short-term self-interest of individuals and the long-term collective interest of society. They're found everywhere, from deciding on whether or not to buy a ticket for the tram or to pay your taxes, or deciding to exploit a natural resource versus its environmental cost. Sustainability is a decision. Now, in these dilemmas, there are many valid factors that are often overlapping that come into play, and it's not always easy or obvious which to decide. If it was, it wouldn't be called a dilemma, would it? But game theory can offer insights into the underlying mechanisms and reveal the pressure points that show how to manage such situations. Next slide, please. Okay, and one more. And ahead, and ahead, and ahead. Go. Okay, so game theory is a very sexy topic these days. Why is it so popular? What is game theory? Next slide, please. In a single word, all of game theory can be bottled up in the word interaction. Let's define what we mean by a game in the game theoretical sense. A game is a situation where, and this part is crucial, the outcome for each player, we call that the payoff, is decided not merely by what that player chooses, but by what everyone chooses. It's used for analyzing situations of conflict and of cooperation. And strictly speaking, it's a branch of mathematics, and it's a part of every economics degree and MBA in the world. But it's a very accessible subject, as we'll see, because frequently it deals with things that we all experience, things that we do and things that we can relate to. In many ways, it owes more to psychology and sociology, the behavioral sciences, than to mathematics. Next slide. Many of its terms are bleeding into the language, such as the prisoner's dilemma, the tragedy of the commons, a zero-sum game, and the famous, though frequently misused, dominant strategy. The intellectuals among you might recognize the chap on the left here. He's the famous John Nash, after whom is named the Nash equilibrium. The rest of you might recognize the chap on the right who played John Nash in the film A Beautiful Mind. So you can have John Nash for real or Russell Crowe. You pays your money, you takes your choice. Next slide, please. The games are everywhere, and everyone plays games, from a baker deciding how many loaves to bake, from a car manufacturer deciding on new models or new factories. So let's go to the live game and see how many of you are logged in. And if anyone's having any problems, Chiara will assist. Looks like we've got a load of you there. Okay, let me explain the game. Let's go back to the slides and the baker. Next slide. As you gathered, we call this game the Baker's Dilemma, and there's a nod to the famous Prisoner's Dilemma. We'll see why. To recap, we play the game in multiple rounds, and each round represents a day's production of loaves. And you've got one simple button, one simple choice. Two buttons, you click either to cooperate or defect, okay? If you cooperate, you're saying, I'm going to bake the 100 loaves as agreed. If you defect, you say, I'm going to bake an extra 50 loaves, okay? Now, can we see the next slide? You don't have to cooperate, but you can see the effects. Now, with a wee bit of mousing, the cooperation ratio is the ratio of the number of people who decided to cooperate over the total people who played. So everybody cooperating, we have 100% cooperation ratio. Nobody cooperating, we have 0. And as the cooperation goes down, so does the selling price shown on the right-hand side of the loaves. 100% cooperation, you can see the loaves will sell for $1, all the way down, pushing it down to 50 cents. So if nobody cooperates and everybody bakes extra loaves, they'll do well, but the price of the loaves will get pushed down. And obviously it's pro rata in the middle, okay? The market will always equilibrate, so everybody's loaves will sell at the same price, no matter how many you bake, and that's all there is to it, easy peasy. When we start the game, you just click one of the two buttons marked Cooperate, Defect, and when everyone is chosen, we'll close the round and we'll see how it went. Then we'll play another round and you can decide whether to keep the choice or change. That would be your strategy. Okay, let's go back, we're on the live screen. Okay, if we're all ready, we'll open the round. Now, your screen should refresh. If it's not refreshed within 5 seconds, you can hit the refresh button, but it should do it automatically. And you will see two buttons at the top. And it's up to you. Now, there's no right or wrong answer. It's a clear choice on your part. Click to cooperate or otherwise. You can see here by the asterisks who's cooperated, who's played rather, right? It doesn't show what you've done, won't influence anybody else's decision. Napoleonic, cooperate. And Bruno will join us. And Bruno not important, no pressure. Okay. Andiamo, vai avanti. So let's close the round and we'll see what's happened. Okay, now I can't quite see the numbers. So the cooperation ratio is very high. It's 95%. There we go. Which means that everybody who cooperated made 95 just over dollars, and the people who defected made $143. Okay, what we'll do now is we'll open another round and we'll play, I don't know, 4 or 5 rounds in quick succession and see what happens. So each of you should now see, again, the two buttons to cooperate or defect. It's a free choice. Maintain your strategy or change. It's up to you. While we go, I'll cover some of the other points. One of the things that's spoken about frequently in game theory and in all of economics is the word rational. And it assumes in the first analysis, and you can test that it's not, it assumes that the people will behave rationally. They will make decisions in their own best interests. So we see this happening as people play. There we go.
Margarita, Susan.
And don't be shy. Okay. Right, let's close the round. Okay, so what we see is a few people have decided to defect. So the cooperators have $63 and the defectors have 95. This is a very, very sudden drop in the cooperation ratio. Some of you have decided to be rational and seek the extra dollars. Now, usually, to be honest, this takes to descend to this level with more people takes a few rounds, but let me jump in here. Usually when we're taking a class, we select someone who has cooperated all the time. I don't know, like this nice chap, Aaron, and we ask him to address the class. Now, for speed, I will go ahead and do this here, right? And you have to imagine that I'm one of the guys who's cooperated all the time, and I'm speaking essentially to you guys who are defecting. So here's the thing. I'm cooperating, and in so doing, I'm helping to keep the price up. And we had an agreement. We had an agreement that we'd all do it, and I'm holding to the agreement, and you, the defectors, you're defecting, and you're pulling down the price of my loaves. Shame on you. You are defecting bastards, and I'm carrying you on my shoulders. I'm trying to keep your price up, and you're defecting and pulling down my earnings. However, it goes deeper. Let me show you on a slide. If we go to here, if you look here against the cooperation ratio at the bottom, which again goes from 100, goes down to 0, we have here in the blue line the amount of money that the cooperators would make. The cooperators are going to make at the left $100 from 100 loaves. You can see the revenue at the right-hand side says $100. And if it goes all the way down, the cooperators only make 50. So you can see in the red line what the defectors make. So what's very clear is that the defectors are going to make more money, but, and here's the crucial point, the defectors here have made, what was the figure, about $95. Right, so look what $95 is on the red line. Red line, just below the 100. It's about there, if you can all see the cursor. So the cooperators made about $60 and the defectors made about 90. So all of you defectors, while I'm cooperating and keeping your price up, not only are you bastards, you are actually stupid bastards, because although you've earned more than the cooperators, which is not really any use to you, your revenue is now only 90-something dollars, which is less than the $100 on this horizontal line that you would all have made if you had only cooperated. So what you have here now is that you have worked extra hard and baked extra loaves to earn less money. How can that be rational? So let's play another round. Napoleon. let's see how this has affected the decisions. Oh, Chianti. A little bit. Scroll up and down, minimize it. No, Jen. There we go. And if Arnaldo wants to have a go, we're about to close the round. Okay, we'll go ahead and close the round. I was there just in time. Okay, and we've got more cooperation, and we're back up to 85. Okay. Again, the defectors of 127, but clearly the price has recovered as we've done it. Let's play another round and see what we do. I repeat, there's not necessarily a right answer or a wrong answer. These are how you value the things, how you weigh them. While you're pondering, perhaps some of you have recognized that this game is in fact an implementation of the situation known as the tragedy of the commons. Now this is, you'll see at the top, we call this the Baker's Dilemma Model 1. We actually have 8 levels of this Baker's Dilemma with more and more, shall we say, sophistication in it. But Model 1 is quite clearly simply an implementation of the tragedy of the commons. A writer on economics in 1883 in England by the name of William Foster Lloyd wrote on this, and it's come into the common parlance, the idea of the tragedy of the commons, which was to say that if you have a piece of common grazing land, if all of the local farmers decide to put their beasts on the commons to graze it, clearly you very quickly reach the state where you are overgrazing it to the point of unsustainability, and there's then no grazing left for anybody. So, any more for any more? Any more to play? Do feel free to have a go. We'll close the round in 3 seconds. 2, 1. What are we? And again, we have exactly the same cooperation ratio of 85%. Okay, let's see if anything changes. Let's have another one. Napoleonic defect. I'm going to pull it down. There we go. It's working very well and showing us. What we're not showing here is the leaderboard. When we play this with larger classes, the right-hand side, and people get very competitive to see how much they can continue to do, but it's not intrinsically a part of the game. This is about a personal decision on how you should tackle this. Okay. And I see we're joined by Mark. Mark, are you a cooperator or a defector? I wonder. Perhaps need a little refresh on the refresh button. You should have 2 buttons for cooperate or defect. Hit cooperate or defect. There we go, new guys. Right, let's see how these how this new blood is coming in to inspire us all. And the price of the loaves has gone down to 75. Okay, but again, defectors make 112. Okay, another round. We'll quickly go through this. Couple more, see what it does. Okay, quick refresh and you're good to go. What we have going on here, and we do it on a website, is the actual prisoner's dilemma. Now, the thing about the prisoner dilemma, which is a very famous game, of course, is that it's a two-person game. And it has some profound features in the dilemma. This, in effect, is a multiplayer version that has the equivalent, creates the equivalent responses as the baker's dilemma. And I think we're all good. What do you think, dear? Okay. Let's close and see what we've got going on here. And it's recovered a bit. We have some nice cooperating people, okay, who are earning $80 and don't want the 125 that they could have had. How's that for rational? Okay, let's do one more. There is also a societal point here, and there is a total at the bottom. Can we briefly see the total at the screen at the bottom? Along here, there is a, yeah, the grand total seems to have an awful lot of decimal points. I think we need to smooth off here, right? But if we roll it back up, the societal point of view, roll it back up, please. No, don't want it. So, okay. Again, we don't have time to do the mathematics, but it can be shown very clearly that in any game, if everybody stays the same, except for you, and you decide to change from cooperate to defect, the grand total goes down. There is no way in which society can benefit by you saying, I'll just cooperate, I'll just defect a little bit, it's only me. Sorry, this will detract, not necessarily a huge amount, but every defection is a detraction. It takes away from everybody. Let's close the round. And it's gone down a wee bit, but again, 118 for the defectors as opposed to the 79. Okay, let's have one last round and we'll see where it takes us. It's beginning to flatten out. Napoleon is defect, please defect. No, I think that's us. Okay, let's have a, let's see how we did. By the way, want a screen dump on this, want to collect it, beautiful. Okay, and we are pretty much leveled out. Okay, so we'll move away from that just now. It's clearly flattened out. And this is not uncommon. The positions tend to, they tend to not harden, but people know what they're doing. Okay, this is a beautiful little graph here that shows two very, very important points. First of all, you can see very clearly the dilemma, which says, whilst it's always in my best interest to defect, if we all defect, you end up worse off. And I repeat, you end up with the stupidity of working extra to gain less. One moment. Yeah. Now, many of you will have heard of the famous phrase of a dominant strategy. I'll go further than that in a minute, but this is, for me, the most perfect example of it. It is there in glorious technicolor right in front of your eyes. A dominant strategy is frequently misused. I have a dominant strategy. I'm going to dominate you. Waha. No, forget that. Complete nonsense. Dominant strategy is always a personal thing. if there is a situation where there is a dominant strategy that affects you, and it doesn't necessarily affect all players in any situation, if you have a dominant strategy, it tells you that of all of the strategies that you can adopt, and in this case, by the way, your set of strategies is very small, there's only 2. But in every instance, if you look along the bottom at the cooperation ratio, which will be somewhere between 100% and 0%, for any cooperation ratio that it stops at, if you look vertically up there, always the defect strategy, the defect payoff is higher than the cooperate. So this says that your dominant strategy is to defect, always defect. There's no way around this. One moment.
The paradox.
Well, the paradox, as we've said, is that in this case, excessive defection hurts everybody. Okay. Now, can we go back to, can we go to the next slide there? Aha, we'll come back to this one. This is a very, very famous slide in these parts, and we know why. Okay. So everything's a game now? Well, it's not, but it frequently seems like that when we're analyzing situations. Let's go to the next one. I know all about this stuff. It's useless. Game theory sometimes gets a bit of stick about what it's useful for and what it's not. And everything, as always, is all about context. It's the context in which you place it and how it informs your decision making. Now, at this point, usually, I'm going to search for this. Usually we ask the class, which we can't do here, that we're working with to let this come out and to raise the points and so on. So let me pose 2 questions for you. Can we go back to the 2 lines? Back one more, back one more to that. Thank you. Okay. At the start, I showed you how it's rational to defect, how you make more money. Why would you turn down the extra money? But equally, later on, we see that you're supposedly rational means that you're working extra and making less. How the hell can that be rational? They can't both be rational to go in both directions. Second question is, if you're in charge of a situation, you're managing some resource, some social project, and it can truly, and I stress this, if it can truly be modeled by the tragedy of the commons, or the tragedy of the loaves, as we sometimes subtitle this, how can you avoid the supposedly inevitable tragedy? While you ponder that, let me give you 2 stories. When we play Tris, the game known as noughts and crosses, X's and O's, tic-tac-toe in America, or Tris, when I play this with my grandson, obviously, if we were playing repeated rounds and counting up how many wins, funnily enough, not every round, but I let him win sometimes, okay? Seemingly irrational, but you can understand why that's done. Second story, I have a friend who likes to make a vegetarian casserole or a vegetarian curry. He's not fussy. He'll use a carrot and an onion and whatever else he has to hand and rattle it off. But he tells me his absolute favorite is when he gets a piece of lamb and he puts it into the curry. Now, it's his curry. He can put in what he likes. The problem here is, if you put in a piece of lamb, it is no more a vegetarian curry. That is what we call a game changer. To go back to the first question, okay, how can it be rational to go in 2 opposite directions at the same time? The answer is it can't. And this brings us to the whole thing of what game theory helps to inform our decision making and looking at such a dilemma. And it depends on the game that you're playing. My grandson, when he plays it, is counting up how many times he can beat silly old grandpa. Grandpa is counting the smiles on his grandson's face. Grandpa is playing a game which is above this, okay? So the dilemma in all of these says, how can we make people take a societal point of view as opposed to the self-interest point of view. Now, what we always find when we play these games, and usually with more people and over more rounds, is that the cooperation ratio follows exactly the same profile. It always starts high, like 80 or 90%, and it declines and declines and declines. It then goes past the point, and you can see here in the graph that we know of old, it's at 33%. And this is the point where even the upper what do you call it, defect strategy is earning less than 100. And that's the point when usually we pick somebody out of the class, or I start waving a stick at people and calling them stupid bastards for all of this. At this point, in the successive rounds, the cooperation ratio goes way back up, but not for long. Then it goes down again and down. There is an inexorable decline. People try with their optimism to inspire others to bring it back up, but even so, it's utterly depressing, I have to admit. Eventually, in the face of futile repeated attempts to get the cooperation ratio back up, even the most optimistic people, they give up flogging the dead horse and they submit to the inevitable. Right? They go over to the dark side. Okay, so why does this happen? Because of the dominant strategy, right? If you have a model, a situation which has a dominant strategy, not necessarily like this, it is crazy not to do it. So the question is, if you are faced with something like that, how can you get out of it? If you were to program a computer to do this, it would instantly, round one, defect, and defect for every other round. As human beings, this never happens. I've never ever played this and everybody just defects and flatlines down at the bottom. There is always the optimism in there, right? And the cooperation ratio, round after round, will go down and down, but it never quite goes to zero, because there's always people who insist, who want to feel the optimism to cooperate, but not so many. Yeah. Go back to the thing. So why does it never go to zero? Leave it there. The reason is people feel that they have, the clue in this game, as we've phrased it, is the word cooperate. It's a loaded term. There's a moral dimension and people feel that they're obliged to cooperate. Okay. You can see that in the ATM, if people cooperate and buy their ticket to go on the tram or the bus, it's a bit more difficult than the metro where it's guarded. If people don't do it, then the inevitable decline will mean that Milan is starved of the resources to keep up the quality of the service and keep it going. So back to my second question, if you really have something which is modeled by the tragedy of the commons, how the hell can you stop it? The answer is you can't. So what do? The answer is you have to change the game. You have to throw a piece of lamb into your vegetable curry. Now, I might be being picky here, but that's for two reasons. One is because I'm a picky bastard. The second one is the distinction is very, very important. Although intrinsically the main mechanism is the tragedy of the commons, you're going to need to put in something here which changes it. And there's three main ways to do it. One is for leadership. Rather like the leadership I did, perhaps more positive than calling all the people stupid bastards, but leadership to show the way and encourage the people to look towards the light side, not the dark side, and look at the long term, look at the societal one. In many ways, this is what we see in nudge theory, right? Many organizations and governmental put out in their bills things like 9 out of 10 people have paid this bill within so-and-so. These are known as nudges. All of these are designed to encourage people away from that. The second one, as you'll see from ATM, is to say, well, I'm going to impose a punishment. That's a game changer. If I were to say to you, let's play that again, but every time you cooperate, at the end of every round, 10% of all the defectors will be fined so many dollars. You will find magically that the cooperation will go up. The ATM here, not surprisingly, puts inspectors on. Without the inspectors, can you imagine how many tickets would be sold? I repeat, it wouldn't be zero, but it would be damn close to zero. The other side of it, the third one, is very similar. In certain situations, you can not only punish for defection, you can inspire and try to pull on the cooperation by offering rewards, right? I'm not suggesting it fits in the ATM model, but in other situations, you can motivate it with a lottery, with a reward, with something which says, after so many so-and-sos, you have the chance to win a prize. And these are the things that pull it all forward. Right, let's see where we are. Okay, can we rattle forward on the slides there? How are we for time? In our interactive approach here, we've taken the idea that, for instance, if you want to learn to ride a bike, I have a book called Teach Yourself to Ride a Bike, and I can lend you the book. Alternatively, I can lend you a bike and you can do it. And as you see here, our approach in teaching people in this interactive model is very powerful. You can see the results. Can we go back one there? Because I've forgotten what it is. Okay, my friend Homer. Okay, I would like to summarize what we have, and then we would be delighted to take questions. Do you want to take off the slide and we're good? Okay, in summary, dilemmas pull in opposite directions. That's why they're called dilemmas. So it's important to realize that there's no intrinsic answer to these dilemmas in the conventional sense. Consider the famous prisoner's dilemma. It's not called the prisoner's problem. It's not called the prisoner's tricky little puzzle, as if you thought about it long enough or knew the secret, you would find a unique answer or solution to it. It's not. It is a dilemma, and the conflict remains inside. It's baked in the cake. So what is there to do? The answer is, you have to look at the context outside. You have to look at the exterior round about this mechanism that's there, and you have to use everything available to motivate it and change the perceptions of the people to make it more worthwhile to move away from the dark. Game theory is interaction. No man is an island entire of itself, as John Donne said. And you can see very clearly that there's nothing you can do that directly controls the price of a loaf and controls the income. You are a member of this, and the outcome, your payoff, depends on what everybody does together. In general, and this is just one part of game theory, which covers many, many, many subjects, it analyzes the mechanisms and the forces surrounding such dilemmas and helps analyze it in relation to your context and your objectives. In this respect, game theory is like a map. It will show you the lie of the land, and sometimes a map is very useful, if not essential. And as we've covered in our interactive model, you can see, you can feel even the interaction and the effects of the strategy. When we do this with people, particularly with students at university, we get very enthusiastic responses. So they say, now I can suddenly see it. The students get very enthusiastic. We've not actually had anybody stab anybody else, but we've seen it very close. So this has been a rapid overview of the subject. There's a lot here. This isn't all there is to about game theory, and there's many things related to strategy, both for social and in business situations. But you can see here where this is found in many, many situations. You see it feeding into nudge theory. You've perhaps heard of the broken window problem that societies will use when there's one broken window. If you don't start fixing it, you end up with the whole neighborhood in disarray. You also have the free rider problem, which the ATM people know very well. And this feeds into in the corporate world, things like corporate social responsibility, the CSR, and the very popular these days, ESG, environmental, social, and governance policy. Companies now operate under the unrelenting gaze of social media, and they must be good and they must be seen to be good. Otherwise, the effects of non-cooperation are immediate. Recently, a few weeks ago in the United States, Toyota Corporation decided that they would start supporting politicians again who had participated in the insurrection, having said that they didn't. They quite clearly said, we're not going to support them, and they waited till it all blew over. There was a huge social media outcry, and within 16 hours, Toyota had slammed on their brakes and backed up the road and took it apart. So cooperation and being seen to cooperation is absolutely vital. At the end of this, we've got some notes which covers all of what we've been talking about here, and we'll put them up in the chat. And in the meantime, we'd be delighted to answer any questions. Aaron, do you want to
Thank you.
grab it back?
Thank you very much, Robin. It was quite entertaining as I expected, and also quite enlightening. And thank you for making it simple enough for a non-mathematical mind like my own to embrace, showing us that as a society and as a group, as a community, like the British Chamber of Commerce, cooperation is really the key to achieve the greater interest, the best interest for all of us, for a society. And thank you for providing us with these three tools to obtain cooperation: inspiring through leadership, punishing, probably not our choice, but you never know, and rewards. Each one in their own industry might be able to find the one that fits the best. Only weeks now away from COP26, I hope the politicians and businesses that are engaged on the huge challenge of sustainability and global warming will be able to understand that this is not a game, but it follows the game theory rules, and we're able to cooperate and provide us and our children with the best outcome. So if somebody has any questions for Robin and his patient wife, Chiara, please go ahead.
I will refresh once. What? Yes, Eleanor.
So it's not really a question, it's just an observation, which is the idea that there is no solution to the tragedy of the commons and blah, 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 prisoner's dilemma, that you have to change the game, which is very much my experience. You can see all these dynamics in action in companies where, for example, there is a strong culture of competition among staff to the detriment of everybody, basically, and to actually get the kind of cooperation you need for people to be able to work effectively together, you really have to change the game. You have to actually sort of say, no, the rules have changed, these are the new rules. So that's very much my experience. So thank you for that. Very, very useful.
I mean, one of the things where this is very useful is in team building, because the instant effect of this is seen, and the interactive. I'm not doing a sales pitch, but the interactive thing is that people sense it and they try it on. The model 2 of our game, which has other things, says, instead of a simple yes or no, cooperate or defect, it says, I want to defect, but just a wee bit. I'm scared of doing it. So instead of baking an extra 50 loaves, maybe maybe 20, maybe can I try 20? And somebody will say, the hell with it, I'll have 50. And somebody will say, I'll have 0. And you can see it's the same thing, but subtle. So people try it on and they try a strategy. However, the underpinning thing is there that the more defection, the more overall it's bad. And you're quite right. You see this inside organizations between people who are more interested in empire building and their own position in the ladder, and have to be motivated round to that. So team building is a key thing here.
Although there's something else here. When a game is repeated, there may be a reputation effect. So people would want to appear to be good because they are going to meet the same people more and more times. So that could partially compensate the trend towards defection.
Excuse me, is there a question in the? Oh. Is that a question from is it Alan? Read it out.
Okay. Mark Pendle, this would be a great team building exercise for a virtual team at the beginning of a project. Alex Taylor says, thanks, Robin. We saw in that graph the revenue each individual received at each percentage level of cooperation, but where is the highest point of cumulative revenue, the highest amounting for society, at 100% cooperation of some other level, or cumulatively, it's always the same?
Excellent question. And the answer is, I did touch on it. The highest total in any column will, the total in a column will only go down if there's increasing defection, right? Now, it's difficult to see in this game because you don't have every player playing in every round. So if the matrix was squared off and everybody played in every game, let's say there were 20 people played and they all played every time, okay? You can total it all up and you can see, and you can do a very, very simple straight line down, which says if everybody cooperates, you have 20 people earning $100 is $2,000. There's no way you beat $2,000. Even if somebody says, 100, I'll go for 150. That's going to put more in the economy. No, it won't. The cumulative effect on the other 19 on their losses is more than any one person's gain. So in essence, we're in the same thing here. In general, and it's another point to get across is you think you've been clever. It's okay. I'll just steal a little bit and it's not important. Yes, it bloody well is. It takes down from everybody. Another
question, Roberto Di Stefano, within an office and productive environment, what are the trigger elements to promote a proactive approach towards a more collaborative attitude?
I think that this is the kind of thing that the bag of tricks that Eleanor has.
Reputation effect.
Well, there is that. The three, and by the way, the punishment thing is where on the ATM you got a multa. You know, if the inspector comes on and you've got no ticket, that's there. So there is a threat which says if you don't, we're going to hold you responsible. And there are many green taxes which go along this thing and says the polluter pays. How that's in the office productivity, that's a harder one for me. I need to think about that. Perhaps Eleanor can join in, but clearly they go under that heading. You have to find the ways to motivate people to think less selflessly, less about the corporate ladder climbing, and more about the participation in the team building. I'm sorry, I'm not coming. Eleanor, do you want to?
Yeah, I often work with agile approaches to teamwork, and which is all about collaboration, about getting people to actually work together, collaborate, which is a different way of working from standard ways. And you basically have to change the rules from the top which means also rewarding different types of behavior. So you actually have to, if you leave the old systems of reward, bonuses, etc. in place, then nothing is going to change. You really have to sort of define what behavior will be rewarded and reward teams rather than individuals. That's not to say you get rid of individual bonuses, but you really have to just sort of be very explicit about what you're looking for.
That was the first one, and I just called it leadership, and it's nudge theory is out there, because let's be clear, it's not everybody who's a bastard. There's always bastards. Oh, I have daughters, and they're so, oh, so and so is a bastard, and so yes, there's a lot, but just not actually everybody. Some people are nice, and there's niceness in almost everybody. It's very, very rare it's something. That's what you have to aim at, and that's what the leadership would do. That's what the nudging would do, and that's what the motivation would do, is to show that as the cooperation rises, look how we go. There's a Christmas bonus for everybody based on how much energy we're saving off the corporate electricity bill, etc. These are the mechanisms that one would use to do it. One moment.
Sometimes one has to be bastard because it's surrounded by bastards. No?
Well,
so there's an element of self-protection.
I mean, again, when you study the prisoner's dilemma, which is the two-person version, which has the same thing, you find people who will defect. And one of the reasons is, in my heart, I want to cooperate. I'm happy to share this cooperation, but I don't trust the other guy, which is rather like Edelman. So I'm defecting, not because intrinsically I'm a defecting kind of bastard, because I feel I have to protect myself against being defected on. And it is a vicious circle. And as you see at the end, once the cooperation, once the rock goes in, and we've played this with many people, and we play it over many, many rounds, and some people keep cooperate, and you see them eventually saying, oh, why bother? You know, I'm losing all of this. And if you look along a horizontal line, it is very rare. And we've got a dynamic bunch of people here with various things on the go as we do this. But in general, you never find anybody going along a line who goes cooperate, or defect, and then they go back to cooperate. It doesn't happen, except when I jump in and hit them with a stick and call them all kinds of defecting bastards and stupid bastards. They then go back up, but only for a small while. It's then inevitably pulled down. And once they've gone from cooperate to defect, really they don't go back. So that's the rot. One moment. That's the rot that you have to work very, very hard to do. And if it's really low, it's a hell of a pull to bring it up. And that's what Ellen is saying. We need a radical paradigm shift here to do this, because this thing is not coming off. But you have to get it high, and you have to have continued sustained effort to keep it high, because there is always the dominant strategy which says, let everybody else pay their taxes, I'll do it. Let everybody else buy a bus ticket, except me, I'm okay, I'll just be okay, and nobody will notice. I think we're there.
Thank you very much, Robin. I think we can close it here, or rather, I would rewind to this.
Have you uploaded?
Yes, we have put the notes, so please check the chat for the PDF that Robin and Chiara have uploaded on it. I would rewind to, there are a lot of good people, nice people, and cooperative people. There's definitely a lot of them at the chamber, and I want to thank everyone for joining, and I think we can do our part by collaborating and getting our future to the best that we can possibly can. Have a good evening, and I'll leave it to Robin to say the last word. I
would just say thank you very much for joining us. We've left you the notes, which has our contact details. We'd be delighted to hear from you. We would welcome very much any feedback on this format, any contributions you can make, and thank you very much. I'm very thirsty now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks,
have a good
guys.
evening.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.